we are back. We're working out of the book Thoughts Are Things by Prentice Mulford. We're on chapter 4. Chapter 4 is called One Way to Cultivate Courage. And let's get rocking and rolling. But these chapters have been a little bit long and they're full of wisdom, a little fluff. So let's get rocking with chapter 4. Thoughts are things. One way to cultivate courage. Courage and the presence of mind mean the same thing. Presence of mind implies command of mind. Cowardice and lack of mental control mean about the same thing. Cowardice is rooted in hurry, the habit of hurry, or lack of repose. All degrees of success are based on courage, mental or physical. All degrees of failure are based on timidity. You being timid. Okay, now right here, this is good. We all know at this point, this is chapter 4. We all know Prentice Mulford. This is Old English. This book was published in 1908, of course, and it was published after Prentice's death. So he passed away in 1896. So all these manuscripts, all these essays are coming from the mid-1800s. So, he's talking about the same thing we talk about today, but of course he's using words that are different back then than we use now, but it's really the same meaning. So kind of hang in there. I'll read it one more time, then we'll kind of move on. Courage and the presence of mind mean the same thing. Presence of mind implies command of mind. Remember, when manifesting, we manifest from within out, but it's really commanding our thoughts. It's commanding what we want. If you really believe in something, you expect it to happen. Makes sense? If you have faith in something, faith means belief. If you really have belief in something, that means you expect it to happen. If you expect something to happen, you can demand it. You can demand things into your life. Then he goes on, he says, cowardice and lack of mental control mean the same thing. Cowardice is rooted in hurry. Remember, if you're in a hurry, worry, you're worrying, you're in a hurry, you're anxious, you have a habit of hurry or lack of repose. When you're in a hurry causes friction. Hurry causes force. When you have friction going on, remember, force negates. So he's kind of relating being a coward, using Old English, of course, to hurry. All degrees of success are based on courage, mental or physical. All degrees of failure are based on being timid. If you're timid, lots of times growing up, even in my very early 20s, even going to my 30s, I grew up kind of very, very timid because my dad was very, very, very strict. And when I grew up, my dad was either a little bit physically abusive, but really verbally abusive. So when you're in those environments, you really grow up. You're not growing up being, confident and knowing exactly what you want. You end up growing up the opposite. You end up growing up more as an empath, but then you end up growing up being timid. You're very indecisive and you're very timid in your decisions and how you carry yourself. You can cultivate courage and increase it at every minute and hour of the day. You can have the satisfaction of knowing that in everything you do, you have accomplished two things, namely the doing of thing itself and the manner of its doing, adding internally to yourself another atom of the quality of courage. You can do this by the cultivation of deliberation. Deliberation of speech, of walk, of writing, and eating. Deliberation in everything. So what he's meaning here, I like this down here. Okay, I don't have it on the proper, I don't want to do it in white. The reason why I highlight everything, of course, is, when I'm reading, it really keeps the glare down. Then when I upload the videos, when the writing's kind of behind like a highlight, to me, it seems like it's easier to read, but there's less, because the screen gives off a bright background. That's why I highlight. Then I'll highlight what's important to kind of have people follow along. But let's go back to this. It's funny how we have courage. Courage is really self-confidence. This is what he's really talking about. You're confident. You know exactly what you want. You know exactly where you're going. If you're doing manifesting, you know the exact desire you want. If you're following up with Goddard, you know the exact intention you want. And when you have confidence, okay, even in Napoleon Hill talks a lot about having confidence or having self-confidence. He has the self-confidence formula if you work through the book, Think and Grow Rich. But he says it right here, but he says it in a different way. If you have courage, if you have self-confidence, you're going to have the deliberation of speech. Your speech is going to change. How you talk is going to change. It's going to be different from if you're being very, very confident than if you're very timid. Okay, how you walk, how you present yourself, how you write, how you eat, how you sit, it's going to be different. You're going to have a different vibration around yourself. There's always a bit of fear where there is a bit of hurry. Listen to this. I just said this right in the beginning when he's talking about hurry. Listen, there's always a bit of fear where there's a bit of hurry. See, when you're in a hurry, you're kind of fearful that you're not going to get it in time. You know what I mean? Same way if you want your dream house. We want to manifest our dream house, but we end up getting in a state of worry and doubt and fear because we think we're going to miss our opportunity. Makes sense? So we create this hurry. I have to hurry up. This is the great environment where I want to live. This is the best part of town where I want to live. So if I don't buy right now, prices are going to increase. The house I want, someone's going to buy from me. So we get in this sense of hurry and worry, but that creates fear. Remember what Napoleon Hill said: fear is crippling. So when we're in a state of hurry, it causes friction. Then what we want, what we're doing is we're making it harder for things to come to us because we're causing so much friction with it. Okay, remember, force creates friction. When you're in a hurry, your worry, your anxiety, that's like you're trying to force it to happen, and force creates friction. Friction keeps everything away from you. So hurry, another thing for hurry really fast here, and he might bring this up in this chapter, hurry just means that you really don't believe abundance is yours. You really don't believe abundance is for all. You really don't believe that there's an infinite of abundance. Abundance is always going to be for you. There's an infinite supply of abundance. Even if you think you missed your opportunity, you missed your opportunity to buy your dream car, you missed your opportunity for that dream vacation, you missed that opportunity for your dream house. But there's always going to be the infinite supply of abundance means that there's going to be another dream house, and it could be even better than the one you had your eyes set on. So you don't need to hurry. You don't need to force things to happen. When you hurry to the train, you're in fear that you may be left. Listen to this. Now, back then, he's using the trains. That's how people did a lot of transportation back in the early 1850s. But he says that when you hurry to the train, you're in fear that you may be left. And with one that comes fear of other possibilities consequent of your being left. When you hurry to the party, to the meeting of a person by appointment, you're in fear of some ill or damage resulting from not being on time. This habit of thought can, through an unconscious training, grow in such an extent as to pervade a person's mind at all times and places, and bring on a fear of loss of some kind, when there is absolutely no loss to be sustained. For instance, a person may hurry to catch a streetcar. You may hurry to catch a taxi. That's what he's talking about. And act and feel as if a great loss would occur. Did he not get on that particular car when there may be another close behind? Or at most 2 or 3 minutes waiting will bring it. Yet the fear of waiting those 3 minutes grows to a mountain size and is in that person's mind a most disagreeable possibility. Through mere habit, a similar condition of hurry may characterize that person's walking, eating, writing. In short, everything he does will render it more and more difficult for such a person to act with coolness and deliberation. The quality of mind or emotion underlying all this hurried mental condition and consequent hurried act is fear. Fear, but another name for lack of power to control our minds. Listen to that. He says fear. Another name for fear is really the lack of power to control our minds. We have this great power, but we're letting our mind get the best of us. That's what he's saying. Fear, but another name for fear, for the lack of power to control our minds. Or in other words, to control the kind of thought we put out. It is this kind of unconscious mental training, which is very common, that begets a permanent condition of mind more and more liable to large and small panics at the least interruption or trivial disappointment. Isn't this so true? A lot of things that go on in our life, now when it's kind of funny because at the time we're going through it, it's not funny. Okay, we have a lot of emotion. We're very serious about it. We don't want to go through it. But isn't it funny how most of the time, most of the trials and errors we go through, after we go through them, we actually think back. Most of the time when we think back, we think, oh, that was so trivial. Why was I having a mental breakdown over it? Why was I letting it be stressed for 1 or 2 weeks? Why was I letting myself get in such a state of worry and doubt and fear? When we look back, most of the things we look back on is so trivial to the grand scheme of things. Okay. Then when we fast forward time, everything worked out perfectly anyway. Isn't it so weird that when we look back that most of the things we go through is trivial. And everything we go through is only our perception of it. It makes disappointments when none are necessary. It is the ever-opening wedge letting in more and more the thought current of fear. For if you so cultivate fear of one thing, you are cultivating an increasing liability to fear in all things. Listen to this. When we go down that worry, you're a worrywart. You go down the worry and doubt and fear. Okay, once you let fear get in your mind, isn't it so true? Once we hurry and have fear in one thing, that transitions into something else, and that transitions into something else. Okay, that's how this works. Isn't it so true? Now reread it one more time. For if you so cultivate fear of one thing, you are cultivating increasing liability to fear in all things. Making it reciprocal. Okay, same way, if I start getting stressed out over here, I start thinking negative over here, isn't it so true that we start thinking negative on other things? If you allow yourself to sit in fear for half an hour that the carriage may not call for you in time to get to the boat or train, you are much more liable to be seized with a series of little panics at every trivial occurrence or obstacle occurring on that particular journey. In this way does this habit of mind enter into and is cultivated in the doing of so-called little things. You are writing or sewing or engaged in the performance of some work which is intensely interesting to you and in which you do not like to be interrupted. If sewing, you reach for your scissors and which have dropped on the floor, you do this in a momentarily impatient mood with a sporadic, jerky action. Your mind, as the phrase runs it, on with your work. You are not taking off your work while reaching for the scissors. You are trying the mind to go on with your work and reach for the scissors at the same moment. You make the movement of your muscles and the action in your body momentarily disagreeable and irksome because you refuse for the second to put into the act the force which it demands. When unconsciously you refuse to do this, any act will become irksome and disagreeable because there is not force enough let on to do the act with ease. It is the endeavor to do it with a weak body. You have the power of throwing your force instantly into any muscle, so making the act easy and pleasant. This capacity for turning on force at any part will you increases through cultivating it. And you can do a great deal more, do it better through the cultivation of deliberation. For deliberation can be as quick as thought, and more the mind is trained in that direction. If you pick up a pen or tie a shoestring in a hurry, you do so not only because such an act is irksome to you. Irksome is an old word. We don't even use this word anymore. It just means it kind of like bothers you. Like it's kind of like you kind of think like it's wasting your time. Oh my God, I gotta tie my shoe. Why did this happen? I've been down and you try to do it really in a hurry. That's what it really means. Now I'll start this little paragraph over again. If you pick up a pen or tie a shoestring in a hurry, you do so not only because such an act is irksome to you, but because you fear it may deprive you momentarily of some bit of pleasure. There you have, again, opened your mind to the thought current of fear. Fear of losing something. So anytime you fear something, you fear losing something. That's why he's giving simple examples. Now he's giving examples that we can relate today. Okay? Of course, we're not waiting for the train, waiting for a boat. You know what I mean? Unless we're going on a cruise, we're going on a cruise ship, or maybe we live in a big city like New York, or maybe like LA where they have metro stations and stuff like that. But But it's the same way. Maybe you're waiting for a taxi. Maybe you get in your car, you're driving to work, and you just get hit rush hour, or you hit just random traffic. Now all of a sudden you're in fear, you're in worry because you think you're going to be late for work. And you play that whole fear in your mind, you go inside your imagination. Don't get so caught up into, well, we don't have trains today. We don't travel by boat today. You know what I mean? Put it in the right retrospective, okay, as today in 2024, because the same thing applies. The cultivation of courage commences in the cultivation of deliberation. In so-called little acts like these, deliberation and courage are as closely allied as fear and hurry. If we do not learn to govern our force properly in the doing of smallest act, we shall find such government far less easy in doing all the acts. Now, and I love how he brought this out, like in this last sentence right here. And if we do not learn to govern our force properly in doing of the smallest act, like if we don't get, even with manifesting, if we don't get used to handling our power of our mind, handling our thoughts with small things, okay, when bigger things come along, those bigger things are going to cripple us. Okay, we got to get good at the small things, because when bigger things come along, we can tackle them even better. Okay, and not really tackle them with force, but when we get really good at small things and we just understand it's my perception of it, to walk around it, when bigger things happen to us, we're more prepared, we're more trained to handle such big things that come into our life, or we look at it as a big obstacle. We get good with little things, we can master the bigger things way more easy. If we analyze what we fear, we shall find we are in the mind trying to deal with too much at once of the thing feared. There is only a relatively small amount to be dealt with now. In any transaction, in the doing of anything, there is but one step to be taken at a time. Isn't that so true? We need to place what force is necessary and no more on that one step. When that is taken, we can take the next step. Isn't that so true? Like lots of times, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, okay, and you might be an entrepreneur watching this, but isn't it so true? We even with manifesting, or we want a dream house, and we're trying to figure out the how, okay, which the how isn't our concern, but we're trying to figure out all this stuff. How in the world am I going to get my dream house? How in the world am I going to make the money? How in the world I'm going to make the down payment, okay? And when we think all this stuff, rather than just taking one step at a time, do the first step first, only focus on the first step, don't concern yourself with what's coming next until you actually get there. That's what he's saying. The more we train our minds so to concentrate on the one step, and the more we do, we'll increase capacity for sending our force all in one given direction at once. This is so powerful, and we'll talk about this. Let me finish this paragraph. Such force extends and should be so used in the so-called minuteness details of everyday life. In this way, deliberation and deliberate action become habitual. And we are, in a sense, unconscious of making ourselves deliberate. Even as after long training in the opposite and wrong direction, we are unconscious of putting on the hurried frame of mind. So I love this first sentence starting right out. The more we train our minds so to concentrate on the one step, the more we do will increase capacity for sending our force all in one given direction at once. Okay, now he's given it with what we're doing so we don't get worried, but this applies with anything we do, anything in life. Focus on one thing at a time, because you're directing all your force on that one thing. Okay, especially manifesting. Okay, when you're trying to manifest something, that's why they tell you only focus on your intention, only focus on what you want, because all your force is directed on what you want. All your force is directed on your attention. Okay, once we start to worry and doubt, okay, well, my force isn't in one direction. My force is, I'm worried over here, I'm doubting over here, and worry can lead to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different things. Now my energy is off worrying about 9 or 10 things rather than just staying focused on the one thing I really want. People do this every single day. I even get caught up into it. Okay, stay focused on one thing. If it's manifesting, you stay focused on one thing. Okay, you don't go off on little tangents. You don't let these little obstacles persuade you where you lose your focus. You still stay focused on what you want. You don't worry about the how, because the how isn't your concern. All you do, and every prosperity teacher teaches this. Every old school prosperity teacher teaches this. Is like the how isn't your concern. The only thing you need to do is stay focused on what you want, because all your power is directing there. That's what he's talking about. And you use this principle in everything in your life. Anything you're going through, you can use this principle. Okay? But lots of times, especially in school, when we have a job, we get into this thought of doing many things at one time. I can multitask. Even this has been debunked. Even all wealthy people that make $1 million or more a year will tell you that doesn't work. But yet, in middle America, you go to get a job anywhere, it's all about multitasking. But it doesn't work because you're focused on 10, 15, 20 different things. Your energy is dispersed between 20 different things. You're not focused on one thing. Rather than getting one thing done and moving on, one thing done, moving on, time management-wise, you actually get more done doing it that way. Every wealthy person says this, but yet the opposite occurs in the workplace. The opposite occurs in high schools and colleges. They teach multitasking, but multitasking don't work. It's about focus. Timid is often the result of looking at too many difficulties or terrors at once. In material reality, we have to deal with but one at a time. If we are going to what we fear will be disagreeable interview with a harsh, irritable, overbearing person, we are apt to go occupying our mind with a whole interview, setting ourselves down in the very middle of it, and seeing it in mind as necessarily trying or disagreeable. Perhaps we were thinking of this morning while we were dressing, but it was then our proper business to dress. To dress was a necessary step for the interview, and to dress well also. Possibly it occupied our thoughts while eating, but it was then our proper business to eat or get all the pleasure possible from our food. That was another step. The more reposeful our eating, the more vigorous will become our taste, and the more strength will our food give our bodies. Possibly the fear of this interview was on us as we walked to the place appointed for it, but it was then our proper business to walk and get from our walking all the pleasure we could. That was another step. Pleasure is a sure result of placing thought or force on the thing we are doing now, in present moment. And the pain of some sort in both present and future is a certain result of sending thought or force away from the act which needs to be done at the moment. Now, going through this, he's explaining kind of being timid in a different way. He's kind of explaining it more. You kind of be timid with life, timid with choices. Kind of being timid means kind of basically you're weak, you're getting worried, anxiety, you're in a hurry. That's how he's describing being timid. Now, another way, even nowadays, like if I say if I was growing up, I was more timid. It was mean timid for me is that you're not very like self-assured of yourself. You don't really have self-confidence. You might be a confidence person, but maybe in public you're not confident. You're being more timid and shy. Or when it comes to decision making, you might be more timid to actually make a real decision, because really you're timid with it because you don't know what the proper choice is, meaning that you're worried about making a bad choice. That's what maybe causes you to be timid. So we can talk about being timid in many different things. And he might go on to that, sharing different examples of what he means being timid. When we dress, eat, walk, or do anything with a mind placed on something else, and this is what most of us do. Listen to this. This is so amazing. Even in the 1850s, when we dress, eat, walk, or do anything with a mind placed on something else, my body's at work, but my mind's someplace else. Okay, I'm at home, my mind's at home, but I'd rather be doing something else. But we're all guilty of this. We are making the present act irksome. We are trained to make every act irksome and disagreeable. We are making the thing feared a certainty. Listen to that. Isn't that so amazing? We're making the thing we're fearing a certainty. We're making it come true. For what we put out in thought as unpleasant is the actual thing a reality. Listen, this is how the laws of the universe work. Remember, the laws of the universe, it's not biased. It doesn't play favorites. For whatever we put out in thought as unpleasant is the actual thing coming to us in reality. And the longer we continue to put it out, the more force we add to it, and the more likely it is then to be realized in our physical world. To bring us what we all want and are seeking, for namely happiness, we need to have perfect control of our mind and thought at all times and places. Isn't this so true? Listen, I'll read this one more time. To bring us what we all want and are seeking for, what we all want in a 3D world, we're trying to manifest a successful life. When we're talking about manifesting here, namely happiness, everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants joy in their life. Okay, everybody wants abundance. Everybody wants to experience abundance in their lives. That's what he's talking about. And listen, we need to have perfect control of our mind and thought at all times and places. One most important and necessary means for gaining this lies in this discipline regarding so-called little or trivial things. Just as the discipline and movement of an army commences with the training of private soldiers, legs and arms. If we hurry and slur over these so-called petty details, you are the easier thrown off your guard or confused at unexpected occurrences. And in life, it is the unexpected that is always happening. And he even brings it up here. We have to get good at the so-called little and trivial things that's happening in our life. But what's happening is the little and trivial things that happen, we bring our attention to it, we have a little meltdown, we say negative things in our mind, we might say them out loud. If we get out of bed in the morning and we stub our toe or we step on a dog bone, if we have a dog, that time I have a dog, his name's Bo, he has these dog bones laying around. Okay, it's dark, I'm walking across and I step on the dog bone, it hurts, I scream. Okay, but do I go out of control when I start letting that one incident, that one trivial act set the whole tone for my day? And that's what we do. Okay, we're not getting good at little things. Then if you're not good at little things, how are you expect to master big things? How do you expect to control big things when they come? That's what he's saying. And most of the time when he wraps up this paragraph, most of the time it's really the small and little things that keep on reoccurring in our lives that come up, pop up as little roadblocks, pop up as little obstacles along the way. And we bring so much energy to it. Remember, what we bring energy to comes into our lives. We need to always keep our minds present with us. We must always stay in present moment. We want it always on the spot, ready to use in any direction. Our thought is not on the spot when we tie a shoestring and think a mile from that shoestring. When we mend a pencil or dwell in one of tomorrow's cares, it is then away. And if it has for a lifetime been in the habit of so straying from the act in hand to the act afar, it becomes more and more difficult to bring it back to use, and the more difficult to use it properly when it is brought back. Now I'm going to highlight this because I got something to say. Again, this is a personal experience with me, and I'm super, super guilty of this. I'm super guilty is my body's here, but my mind's someplace else. If I can remember, I lived in California for 18 years, and most of the time I went to California, I worked in the entertainment industry. I worked on sets, movie sets. I've been an actor, principal actor. I started off doing background. I've worked on set as a crew. So I've done a lot of things on set, and I've been on many, many hundreds of movie sets over the last 15 years. Because I used to work, 4 or 5 days a week. So, sometimes on different sets, not on the same set for the whole year. So I've been on hundreds of sets, maybe 1,000 sets, I don't know. And one of the guilty things, I'm really guilty of this, and it really starts a bad habit, is when you're working, I'd rather be home. When I go to work and be on set, I'm waiting around all day long, working 12 hours on set. My mind is someplace else. My mind is going out to eat afterwards with my buddies. My mind is, I want to be home hanging out with my girlfriend. Okay, my mind is someplace else rather rather than my body. And that's what he's talking about. Okay, wherever you are in present moment, you should be aware of what you're doing in present moment and really be in present moment. Because if you create a habit where whatever you're doing and you're never in present moment, wherever your body is, your mind is someplace else, you're creating a huge bad habit. Because you're never ever living in present moment. And remember, present moment is where all the power is. When you're trying to manifest, present moment is where all the power is. And I'm super guilty of this. I'm super guilty of and it's really a hard habit to break. And I'm still working on this. Is really living in present moment. Our thought moves from one thing to another with more than electrical speed. And we can unconsciously train this quickness to be ever darting from one thing to another until it becomes almost impossible to keep it on one thing for 10 consecutive seconds. Isn't it so true? Our thoughts are all over the place. On the contrary, through cultivation of repose and deliberation in all things, we can train ourselves to mass and fasten our thought on anything as long as we please. Now, this is right here. This is the flippin' secret of manifesting. This is Neville Goddard right here. This is how to master Neville Goddard techniques right here. This is how to master your intention. This is how to master your focus of intention and your focus of intention on imagination. He says it right here, back in the 1850s, way before Neville Goddard was even born. On the contrary, through cultivation, repose, and deliberation in all things, we can train ourselves to mass and fasten our thought on anything. Listen to this. We can think on anything as long as we please, to throw ourselves into any mood of mind we please, and to throw ourselves at will into sleep or a semi-conscious, dreamy state at restful as sleep. This is Neville Goddard right here. These are very small parts of possibilities for human mind. There is no limit to its growth or the increase of its power, nothing. They separated the word here. I'm sorry. And nothing coming with the limits of our imagination, but can be accomplished by it. Listen, he even brings up the imagination here. This is in the 1850s. These steps to these attainments are very small, very simple, and relatively easy. So simple and easy that some reject them for that reason. This is Neville Goddard 101. The whole thing with Neville Goddard, setting your attention, go inside your imagination, is being able to think of your attention, think of that movie scene that you're creating inside your imagination, and be able to think of your imagination, then drift off to sleep. But what if it takes you 20 minutes to go to sleep? What that means is you have to be very, very good at being able to train your mind that I can sit here and imagine what I want. Imagine my attention for 20 minutes until I go to sleep. And he just says this in this giant paragraph here. Most people can't even hold their attention, hold the thoughts for 10 seconds on one thing. And he's not even talking about 2024. He's talking about the 1850s here. The same thing is true today. This is how you master your mind control. This is how you master manifesting. And he says that at the middle of this paragraph right there, how to do it. Unquestionably, these powers and many results coming from their exercise were known ages ago to a relative few. Listen, this is written in the 1850s, and now he's saying all this information was done from the 1850s ages ago, ages before his time. Unquestionably, these powers and many results coming from their exercise were known ages ago to a relative few people. But any power or condition of mind consequent upon it can be made more clear to an English-speaking person through the use of English word or a form of expression than by terms taken from other languages. The North American Indian and the Oriental had in cases the power of so dismissing all the thought and making their minds in a sense a blank as to become not only insensible to fear, but these mental conditions render their bodies almost insensible to physical suffering. It was the power of reducing this mental condition which enabled the Indian, when taken captive, to withstand every device of torture inflicted by his captors, and to sing his death song under the affliction of fire and the slow process of bodily mutilation, too horrible for description, and which very few of our race could endure without passing into the frenzy of agony. The Indian is far more reposeful and deliberate than the majority of our race, and in both mental and physical movement, unconsciously cultivating this repose and living a life less artificial than ours. He increased his spiritual power, one sure result of which is that command of mind over body which can lessen physical pain, and as an ultimate possibility, banish it altogether. Deliberation of movement, or in plainer English, movement of muscle so slow that our mind has time to follow it, gives one time to think in great and small emergencies. But the lack of such training causes unconscious physical action so confirmed becomes this habit that our body moves without us aware of it. Awkwardness, lack of address, lack of tact, all due to this lack of command of mind caused by lack of deliberation. Or in other words, a trained incapacity for taking time to think or plan the proper thing to do. The terror-stricken person, if the ship seems in sudden danger, runs up and down the deck to no purpose, and this physical action is an exact correspondence of the lifelong condition of his mind, whose thought has been ever so darting from one thing to another, just as the whim seized him. The more deliberate person whose mind is trained to take time to think and hold or concentrate its thought holds himself steady and so gives himself time to see what may be the opportunities for escape. And these two persons would pick up a pen in a very different manner and with very different mental action and method. To train then for courage is to train for deliberate movement in all things, for that is simply training to mass and hold our force to reserve and let out no more than what is needed for the movement. I'm right here. Isn't that so true? Listen to this. Think of this in terms of manifesting, because this might be kind of why you're listening to this book series, because you want to know how to manifest better. You want to know the secrets to success. You want to know how to have an abundant life. And you're interested in all this old school books because this is where the meat and potatoes really lie. This is where all the people teach today is gathering this stuff from old school, if they're going that deep into studying and research. Listen, the train then for courage is to train for deliberate movement in all things. Okay, that's how manifesting works. You have to be decisive. You have to know exactly what you want. This is what he's talking about. You have to be deliberate in what you want. The deliberate movement in all things. See, that's where the power comes. If I know exactly what I want and I put all my focus on it, and I don't let my mind drift, and I'm in control of my mind's drifting all over, then on top of it, when little obstacles happen, I move my focus on from what I want. I want my dream house, but I stop thinking about my dream house and I shift over thinking about stubbing my toe when I got out of the bed. This is what we do. Even though it's funny, but this is what we do, where we're constantly losing our focus. To train then for courage is to train for deliberate movement in all things, for that is simply training to mass and hold your force in reserve and let out no more than is needed for that movement. No quality of mind is more needful to success in all undertakings than courage. And by courage, I mean not only courage to act, but courage to think. In everyday business, thousands dare not think of taking a step which would involve an outlay of money above the average of their expenditure. There is appalled at mention of so large a sum. They were not, out of pure fright, entertained the idea long enough to familiarize themselves with it. Now, if they reverse this mental action and instead of immediately giving way out of lifelong habit to this fright, would take time and allow the thought to rest in their minds instead of driving it out, there would be in time come to them ideas concerning ways and means for meeting the additional expense, earning that additional money, and thereby making a larger sum of money at the same time it took to make the small sum. Isn't it so true? This whole thing right here, he's talking about encourage. You don't have the courage to move forward, but he's also talking about fear. Bob Proctor explains this, but he explains it a different way. He talks about the fear barrier. Okay, when you grow up in poverty, even though you want the abundance, you want a middle class lifestyle, you want an upper middle class lifestyle, you want more money. Okay, but at the same time, you wanting more money, it causes such deep fear in you because you're not used to having those thoughts. Okay, you have worry and doubt and fear. And you come to your fear barrier, and that fear barrier, what we have to understand, this fear barrier what we want in life, our dreams are on the other side of fear. So we have to learn how to break through this fear barrier. We have to learn that fear is only in our mind. There's no place else. It's made up. We've made it up. We've made it up in our mind. We have to learn how to just keep on walking forward. And that's why he talks about a page back. Only focus on one step at a time. Don't focus on the 20 steps you got to do. But that causes worry and doubt and fear. Only focus on one thing at a time. And once you got done with step 1, you're at step 2. You focus on step 2 until you get to step 3. That's how we manage fear. For instance, you say to the woman who goes out to wash for the day and has never done anything, Miss A, why don't you start a laundry? You can make a great deal more money in doing so. I start laundry. Where in the world is the money coming from to start laundry? Now, what he's talking about for her to start like a laundromat, for her to start up her own business. That's what he's talking about. Here, the woman, instead of entertaining your idea, gives way immediately to fright concerning what seems to her the immense sum required and following the same reasoning. Headlong, panicky style thought sets up in a moment at opposition to your proposition. She dare think only of working for a day's wage as she's so called upon by those who hire her. And thousands for this reason dare not think, or find it disagreeable for them to think, of getting into some broader, more responsible, more profitable sphere of business. Because they bunch at once all its possible difficulties into a mass. And out of mere habit will look only at the awful and imaginary bunch. So what he's talking about here, especially at the end, is that when you give someone an idea, and you give someone, why don't you open a laundromat? Why don't you open a business, do it yourself, rather than the individual people hiring you, just for a day's wage? That's what he's talking about. Then when you give someone that idea, what they do is, they think all at once how to do it. They think of the 100 things they got to do, and it overwhelms them. And it basically shuts them down in fear. That's basically what we're doing. Rather than just taking one step at a time. What he's saying in this paragraph, rather than just entertaining the idea and letting that idea grow in your mind and grow in your imagination, people just outcast it right away. And I can remember, maybe it was like a year or two ago, I worked with AutoZone as a manager, a store manager, only for a short time. And a lot of people work at AutoZone. I was talking to this one kid that worked there, and he wanted to open up his own shop, his own mechanic shop. So I said, I was from California at the time, and I said, well, in California when I lived, I had a maintenance guy. He was a traveling mechanic. He set up his truck where he went to everybody's house, so you didn't have to take your car. He came to you. So I said, why don't you do that in Ohio? The first thing he did was say, well, I don't have the money. That takes a lot of money. And I said, yeah, but you build up your tools slowly. You build up everything slowly, and you could probably do simple jobs very easy. You can make like a little bit of money on the side while you still have a job, and that would kind of grow into something more. Because you would just, as you make money, you buy more tools. That way, you have more tools. You can take harder jobs. But the thing is, you're traveling to their house. They're not bringing their car to you. You're going to their place. But it's so funny how he wanted to do it, but he dismissed it just as quick because it was like, well, that takes money, Chad. So he didn't entertain the idea at all, even though that's what he really wanted to do. But Mrs. C, the more deliberate washerwoman, hears your proposition and entertains it. So what he's saying now in this example is like, now you talk to a different person. Okay, maybe you're not talking to her, but she overhears the conversation. Now he goes, but this person, Mrs. C, overhears your conversation. Then it says, the more deliberate washerwoman hears your proposition and entertains it. In time, she says to herself, why should I not start a laundromat? Other people have and succeeded. She lives in the idea. She lives in her imagination. Talks to one another about it and finds out how they started. The longer she keeps in this current of thought, the more plainly does she see the ways and means by which other people have set up for themselves. Finally, the idea grows upon her that she takes some step forward, that end, and then another, and then another. And so by degrees drifts into the business. A person is cool and collected in the face of any great danger because he has the power of holding his mind to the thing to be done on the instant. Cowardice has no such power and can see in mind not only the source of danger, but a score of possible results which may or may not happen to him. In battle, one man may attend to his duty with a vivid and by no means agreeable condition of mind as he sees men struck and mangled all about him. But the force of thought he can bring to bear on the performance of his duty is greater amount than that coming of the realization of the slaughter around him, and commands and holds his body to his post. The man who runs, or would if he had the chance, cannot fix his mind on anything but the fearful possibilities of the moment. And the so-called trivial act of picking up a pen and threading a needle or opening a door, I do not argue that all one's force or thought should be placed on the act, but only enough to perform the act well while the rest is kept in reserve. It is in substance the same as in picking up a weight. You would not try to expend the force in lifting 1 pound that you would in lifting 50 pounds. You do not expend a great deal more force in the act of picking up a pen when your mind is preoccupied with something else, for you then trying to do 2 things or lift 2 things at once. You will remember that anything which is done in mind expends quite as much force as if done with the body, so that the persons who linger abed in the morning and think with dread of the breakfast to be cooked or the rooms to be swept, so far expenditure of force is concerned, will be doing those acts then and there while lying on their backs. How many people is guilty of this? He explained it kind of weird a little bit, but he's saying if you wake up in the morning and you go inside your imagination, you start thinking and worrying about all the stuff you got to do in the day. Well, I got to clean the day. I got to wash the car. I got to go get it. I got to go to the mechanic, get it fixed. And I got to cook breakfast and clean. Or I got to do this great big video series. I got to film it and read the chapters and film it and edit it and upload it. What he's saying is, if I'm just sitting there imagining it, I'm expending all that energy, because if I can see it in my mind, it's like I really did it, because I'm doing it in my mind. That's what he's saying. Don't go inside your imagination and fret and fear and worry and doubt. Just do it. And expending just force enough to perform any act, a capacity which gradually grow upon you as you familiarize yourself with this idea and set your desire or demand upon it, you cultivate and increase continually that desirable state of mind, which in everyday language is known as having your wits about you. That means, in other words, always having, no matter what you are doing, your mental eyes open in every direction. And while outwardly you seem all intent and occupied in one act, your mind or spirit, like a vigilant senile, is continually on the lookout, so as to give you notice in the fractional part of an instant for all that is going on about you, and also to direct you how to meet the event wherever it may be. This is not only the characteristic of courage, but a tact and address. It was the electric vigilance and mind watchfulness that gave an American officer during the Revolution, who, in the confusion of battle, suddenly found himself in the front of a British regiment, the deliberation to ask, "What troops are these?" "The Royal Scouts," was the reply. "The Royal Scouts remain as you are," was his answer, and he rode off in his own lines. That man had a mind trained to give him time to think. On one occasion, Mrs. Farron, the celebrated English actress, discovered where her part required her to hem a handkerchief that the property man had forgotten to lay out the handkerchief needle and thread, and etc. Without a moment's hesitation, she sat down and imitated so naturally the motion and manner of a lady in sewing that most of her audience never suspected the omission. The act involved self-possession, coolness, deliberation, presence of mind, and courage. Do not all these terms imply a similar state of mind? A woman by habit, hurried and flurried, could not have done this. And I believe that when Miss Farron saw proper to pick up a pen, she did so in much a more deliberate manner than would have habit hurried or florid man or woman. Cultivate deliberate act and movement in all things. What he's saying here, I'm right here, I just moved it up. Okay, what he means by cultivate deliberate act and movement in all things, even with manifesting, I always bring it back to manifesting, because that's what we're trying to do, is when you set an intention, we have a desire, you have a want, make a true decision. Be decisive on what you want. Be deliberate on what you want. That's what he's talking about. Cultivate deliberate act and movement in all things. And you lay more and more the solid foundation for courage, either moral or physical. But deliberate act does not always imply slowness. Just as thought moves with electric rapidity, so it may move the body when occasion requires. But the thought must be clearly planned, seen and outlined in mind before it is allowed to act on the body. It is seen or planned, and so acts to use the muscles in the rapid thrust and parry of a skilled fencer. And similarly with the professional danseuse, in fact, in many superior accomplishments, be they of a painter, musician, or other artist. These, however, in many cases are but partial controls of mind. Outside of this art, the artist may have little mental control or deliberation, and as a result be nervous, vacillating, easily disturbed, whimsical, and timid. The mind is garrison to be armed at all points and disciplined to meet any emergency. We deal with making or self-making the whole men and women whose minds are not cultivated all in one direction and neglected everywhere else. It is far better to the end to be growing symmetrically and to be finished so far as we have grown all around, than to have the power all concentrated on one talent or capacity and becoming that the world calls a genius. The inside history of a genius is often a sad one and shows that it's brought little happiness to its possessor. Scores and hundreds of little acts every day, such as picking drop articles from the floor, opening and shutting drawers, laying or reaching for articles on the toilet table, and attending to minor details of dress, are done unconsciously in this hurried condition of the mind, especially when some more important object engages our attention. We snatch, we clutch, we drive recklessly about in doing of these things, and we weaken our bodies and become tired of it, and finally panic and easily frightened through this mental habit, for fear and cowardice slip in far more easily when the body is weak. Isn't that so true? This habit cannot change in one day or a year when it is pervaded for a lifetime. Listen to this. This is what I just said when I gave my habit. Okay, my habit of, what I'm doing, my mind drifts and want to be doing someplace else. My body's at work, my mind's totally someplace else. And I've been doing this for years, and this is what he's saying. This habit cannot be changed in a day or a year when it is pervaded a lifetime. You've been doing this stuff for 15 years, 20 years, every single day. You can't expect to change in one day or a week or a month. And then he continues, neither can the ills, mental and physical, resulting from such habit be cured immediately. There can only be gradual growth away from them. You gradually grow. Just like if we've never been to the gym, we're out of shape. When you go to the gym, well, you're not going to be in a shape in a few days. You're not going to be in shape in 1 week or a month. But the real truth is, you will gradually, if you stay consistent, persistent with it, you will gradually get in better shape. You will gradually look more athletic. You will gradually be able to push it harder through workouts and make it through workouts. You will gradually be able to increase your workouts, increase the time you're working out. You'll gradually get stronger. If in reading this you feel convinced that there is something in it, and you feel also conviction that some portion of it suits your own case, your cure has been then commenced. Real conviction, the conviction that comes from within, never leaves one or stops working to get us out of the evil way and put us in a good one. It may seem buried and forgotten for seasons, and our erroneous habits may seem growing stronger than ever. That is not so. But as convictions take root, we are seeing our errors more and more clearly. This is like being aware. When I'm right here, this is about being aware. This is why we talk about awareness all the time. Awareness and manifesting. Awareness on our thoughts and habits. This is what he's talking about. Once you're aware, this is where the power is. That's what he's saying. But as convictions take root and we are seeing our errors more and more clearly, we're aware of them. We're seeing what we're doing. We forget that one time we were blind and did not see them at all. If this book brings you to a conviction of a long established error, it is not I individually who bring or convince. It is only that I put out more or less of a truth which takes hold of you, and the cord of truth in you senses it. If I apply the torch to the gas jet and light it, it does not follow that I make either the fire or the gas. I am only a means or agent for lighting that gas. No man makes or invents a truth. Truth is as general and widely spread and belongs to every individual as much as air we breathe. And there is pleasure enough in being its torch barrier without presuming to claim the power of its creator. Above all, demand more and more courage of the supreme power. And that's the end of chapter 4, my friends. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know what's working for you. Even if you're struggling, comment below. Remember, I love you guys, and I'll see you in chapter 5.